What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Yanik Deschenes of YPR. You can find them at yprcanada.com. And Yanik, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, one of my favorites is Kevin Hurrigan, who runs Spinutech. He had an agency since 1995, so it's very interesting to see the landscape of the internet, of business, of the agency space, and have him talk through all of the ups and also the downs. So that was really interesting. Another one was Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey actually has a Second Bite podcast. He helps pair agency owners with private equity and helps sell agencies. And he calls it the Second Bite because sometimes when those agencies sell to private equity and private equity sells again, they make more in the second bite than they do in the first sometimes. So he has some great agency owners talking through kind of the exit process, which I find very interesting. And Adi Clevitt has a very interesting business, Yanik, where she is a done-for-you service for SOPs. So, the non-sexy stuff, like the operational stuff that no one wants to do. She will help go into companies and help actually map out their SOPs for them. So it helps with onboarding of staff members, of clients, and everything else. So that was a good one. We geeked out on our favorite productivity tools and software, so that was a fun one. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. So we do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the hosts in the company so they can create great content and great relationships. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profiling the people and companies I most admire on this planet and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I am honored to have Yanik Deschenes on. He's the founder and president of YPR. YPR is an agency that pursues the goal of helping brands and organizations create organic word of mouth within the relevant communities. I love the distinction there of relevant communities because sometimes it just makes sense to be in certain communities and not in everywhere, right? Yanik actually they've helped elevate the brand equity of a lot of even global organizations, including Walmart, National Bank, Morgan Stanley, and MUJI. And they have offices in Canada and the US, Montreal, Toronto, New York. And what YPR really does is creates conversations that spark curiosity and generates brand value for these companies. And Yanik is also the co-founder of C2 Montreal. It's a global conference on commerce and creativity. Yanik, thanks for joining me.
It's a real pleasure, Jeremy. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Talk a little bit about YPR and what you do. And while you're doing that, there is a video portion. I'm going to pull up YPR and people can check it out.
Oh, you're so nice. Listen, as you mentioned in the introduction, we are an agency that generates word of mouth for clients within a defined community. So basically, it's advertising without doing advertising. The end game for us is basically having credible third parties sharing the brand story to their audience organically without being paid, without being asked. It comes from the art and they want to share the brand story to their audience. So it's organic word of mouth that we are doing, whether it's in the kind of a B2B environment or B2C environment.
Talk about, and we're looking at the site here, and I know you have a proprietary process, and I believe you even have a tool that people can use to rate their pitches. right? So I would love to hear some of the examples of mistakes you've seen people make with pitching or reaching out
Yeah.
to these companies.
No, for sure. I just wanted you're talking about the press test. It's about pitching a story to a media because most of my clients, what they want to be in the press. Okay. They want to have positive articles about them, about what they're doing, how great they are in the press without, having to pay them. So, as you may imagine, reporters from all around the world, they get swamped by people from, the industry pitching them some stories. And what we realized is that I've been in the business for a while, and I've developed, like over the years with my team, some criteria, over 30 criteria that makes a pitch, a story to a media that is going to maximize your chance to get a return from the reporter and then an article. So we were doing this manually for many years, and with the rise of AI, we decided to launch a tool that is called a press test that allows people to put their pitch. So, example, you want to pitch Rise 25 to the Wall Street Journal. You say, "I am Jeremy. I launched this, and please write an article." So the Wall Street Journal, they probably going to say, "Oh, it's Jeremy. I'm going to write a story on Jeremy."
I would lead with, "I know Yanik," and they're like, "Oh, okay, no problem."
No. So basically, what the tool will do at the end of the day, it will say, "Listen, Jeremy, this is your chance to converting an article is about 2%. Okay. You don't have based on all the criteria, but in order to maximize your chance, here's what we recommend you to cover." So the tool will help PR professionals to build a story that is more relevant with the target reporter, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the US. The tool is applicable to 45 countries around the world. So we're very proud. And we've tested that tool, for years manually. And now the tool is open to public, and it's working well.
What are you mentioned there's 30 criteria. What are a few of those criteria that you have seen people just fall short of, they're not using in their pitches?
Yeah. There's three big families at the end of the day. And I think for those of us, or those of your listeners or viewers that are interested in doing media relations or pitching stories to media, there's three big criteria or three big family that they need to take into consideration. The first one is the context. Your story has to be contextual. You got to make sure what is happening in society, in the economy, what is happening at the moment. If your story is good, but is not linked with the context of the moment, then reporter may say, "Jeremy, great story, but I'll call you later." Okay. So that's the first family. The second family, you got to bring tension in a story. Okay. If it's only "I'm the best in the world, you should write an article about me because look how great I am," it may not work, because reporters, as you probably know, they like not black and white story, but the stories that are gray, the stories that there's maybe a person that is in favor, another person that is not in favor, a story at the end of the day that will spark a conversation. So bringing tension in a story, for us, it's super important. And that's a tricky part, because a lot of clients, they don't want normally to be vulnerable in front of their, in front of their audience, or in front of their customers or clients or shareholders or whatever. So that's a tricky thing, but we can help with them, and the tool will help them to bring tension to the story. And finally, the third pillar is making the story brings value to the audience. At the end of the day, you get probably thousands of emails every day. You have a notification. You're swamped by content. And if you don't bring value to the human who's reading the story or watching the story, then people will swipe. As simple as that. So obviously, this is a very high-level summary of the press test.
Oh, I love that. You know, the context, attention, the value of the audience. And it makes me think of, Yanik, kind of the hero's journey, like, which is really every great story. If you look at TV and movies, in the hero's journey, there's always like this tension, these low points, and these friction, and that's what makes a great story. So no, I never thought of it as like thinking of it as a tension.
Vulnerability is key. You and I if you want to make a connection with the person, if you show you're vulnerable, automatically the level of engagement will be present. They will trust you more. They will show that you really care. And this is all the kind of the process in what I do and what we do in order to generate this kind of organic word of mouth.
How do you, I don't know if there's a good example of a client where, like you said, they may be resistant to being vulnerable. They've never really flexed that muscle. And now you're telling them to do it on a big stage, like on the Wall Street Journal or some of these other publications. I think I was reading, like, you've gotten people all over the place, the New York Times, the Economist, the Guardian, all over there. So how do you talk to your clients and or the team to get them to be okay with it, and then also share with it the vulnerability? I don't know if there's a good example with one of your clients and what they actually ended up sharing. Maybe they were resistant to.
Yeah, and the notion of vulnerable is always very good, but also generosity is also very good as well. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example that, you know, with Share-Through. Share-Through is one of the leading programmatic advertising company in North America, and you know, they're based in Montreal. They have offices in San Francisco and New York, and you know, in order to win in that kind of business, in that kind of industry, you need to scale. If you don't scale, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to be able to provide the best technology, provide the best, you know, prices, provide, you know, attract the best talent. The list goes on. So the owner of the company came to me, said, Yanik, help me scale the business. All right. I got to attract other investors. I'm grateful. I got investors from Quebec who are believing in me and my vision, and they gave me money. But the reality is I need big investors, especially in the US, to believe in my model, believe in my vision, believe in my mission, and invest in my business. So while I was talking to him, I realized one important thing. This company has made everything that is possible to make digital ad campaigns carbon neutral or net zero. He says it's a no-brainer. Any kind of digital campaign it is possible that they have no impact on the planet. So I said, this is great. This is what makes you unique. I said, here's what we should do. Let's build an event, a platform where we will invite the entire community in the world of advertisers, media, you know, all the players to bring together with the goal to become an industry that is carbon neutral or net zero. It's not going to be an ad about how great your products are. It's going to be an opportunity for people to talk about that and get consensus. And we launched that, you know, it's called the Green Media Summit. It was launched last year in 2023. The second edition in New York City was last month, April 2024. And then it generated a lot of attention. It brought the 400 top marketers, media executives from North America at the event to discuss about that. Here's the thing, why it's good for Share-Through. They are in the middle of conversation about the possibility that the digital ad campaigns can be neutral, carbon neutral or net zero. They don't have to do anything. In the mind of people, carbon neutral equals Share-Through. So this is a way for them, and it cost them a lot of money, but it was a generous act in a way to engage the entire industry in that common goal. So that's an example, Jeremy, that I feel it's interesting to generate the kind of coverage or the kind of attention and spark the right conversation in the right community.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the framework that you laid out, the context, tension, vulnerability, and under that, like with the tension, there's, you basically talk about what's unique about that company, so it could be what they're doing differently, what's vulnerable there. And that can be used, like you said, to create a campaign with the client, which end up being an event. It could be used, I think, when I think of people posting on social media, right? Or any piece of content for that matter. If we follow the context, the tension, and the vulnerability, and the value to the audience piece, that can be followed for all of these channels.
And you know what, Jeremy? I think in the way the society evolves, sorry if I take a minute, because as you see, English is not my first language. It's French, my first language. So sometimes I have to think a little bit harder for me. But the way the society evolves, you got to be more and more and more and more perfect. Okay, you cannot say that word because then you're going to offend a certain community. You cannot use that example because then you're going to offend another community. So in today's corporate world, you got to be perfect, because the moment you do something wrong, you're in deep shit. Okay, so it's tough for companies to be vulnerable. My job and my team's job is to find a territory where they can be vulnerable, because at the end of the day, people strive for authenticity. They strive for authentic people that are not afraid to share what they truly believe. So we got to bring that kind of environment in place where corporation, they don't need to stand politically on one side or have an impact on the other sides. There's things in the industry where you can express a point of view. Just the notion of work from home versus work from the office. Sometimes I've seen some clients being very out loud saying, too bad, guys, in order to generate innovation, creativity, we got to work at the office. I understand you're comfortable at home. I understand we were in the pandemic. I understand we were in you had the habit to work from home, but we have to change this habit. In order to provide value to our clients, we got to be at the office. And that can generate a lot of tension, because a lot of people are not ready to make that move, especially in Canada.
I want to get inside your head and your team's head with the Green Media Summit. So you take a client through your process and you really do your deep research and you find out what's unique, and you come to this piece, right? That it's context, there's tension, there's value to the audience. You have this carbon neutral, which is unique to them. I'm wondering how you decided to do an event, because there's probably a lot of different things or ways you could have taken that, what's unique about the company. So why did you decide to actually move through with the Green Media Summit?
Yeah, it's more a platform than an event. It's a platform where people can share best practice throughout the year about their intention to become carbon neutral, because a lot of people, no one will say, I'm against sustainability. I want the planet to die. No one will say that. Okay. But at the same time, they have to run a business. They say, listen, I get the point, but I may have other priorities, and we get that. And through that platform, some experts have came around the table or have came during the event in order to share some examples to get to that objective and make the demonstration that it's not because your campaigns are suddenly net zero or carbon neutral, that it's gonna cost you more money. So we made that the examples we brought so people can relate to that. And we're starting piece by piece, example by example, to build that kind of movement. Because at the end of the day, what generates good word of mouth? It's creating an organic movement toward a common goal that is greater than the company, that is greater than the client. And our job is to do that. What's the common goal? And with every client we do, we're trying to find this common goal that is aligned with their vision, their mission, their values. And then we work together, because remember, you got to be authentic. You cannot just be like opportunistic, because it's going to backlash. If you say, oh, there's an opportunity there, let's say we're that, and then 2 weeks or 2 months later, we shift strategy, people, are more and more, they want to trust the organization, and it's important to walk the talk. So I don't know if it helps you to understand the process of the Green Media Summit. And the goal at the end of the day is to make sure the entire industry gets to carbon neutral or net zero. It's not necessarily about share through selling more green media products, but at the same time, it goes together. People will understand, will probably intrigued to understand the point of view of share through. So it's a strategic move that is aligned with the vision of share through, but serve, more importantly, a common greater goal.
Yeah, and when a company maps that out, right, their mission, their values, and the common goal, then correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost easier when you're attracting other companies for something like this, because they also have that goal and it's common among their mission as well. So when you're thinking of the companies, because my next question is like, well, okay, now how do you kind of mobilize the different companies for this platform, right? So I guess the answer would be you look at the common goals of other companies.
Yeah, and that's key. Obviously, if you cannot convince other companies to join in that movement or be part of the event, then it's not going to work. And that's very difficult. And the most important thing in these cases is making sure that this platform is not there to serve the company, the client. It serves the industry. So you give them a voice to share their point of view. If you look at the program of the Green Media Summit, it was not about share through sharing their story. It was more about other great companies, about sharing their vision. And some say something, others say other things, and it's giving them the voice at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's the way it goes. And also attracting credible third parties that will endorse. There's nonprofit organizations that are there and they don't necessarily have the resources to build that platform. When they see a company that is ready to invest, they will endorse the movement. So that will add a layer to the credibility. And you also have some media partners that can join and can say, listen, I like that. It's part of our mission as well. We'll support you. So you got to find these kind of third parties, and then success breeds success. You get a few, more and more and more and more, and then obviously you get the movement you want.
Yeah, I love that because, maybe the nonprofits don't have the funds to build this type of platform, but they can they can be a part of the platform, and it benefits both parties, because then the party holding it gets that kind of endorsement and authority from that nonprofit, and the nonprofit gets the platform.
And ultimately, and I gave you the example of the share through example. As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm part of the founding team of C2 Montreal. C2 Montreal is a global conference on commerce and creativity happening every year in Montreal. So it brings companies from all around the world that believe that creativity can move the economy or society forward. But at the beginning, this conference was built in order to help a creative agency to show how different they do their work, how atypical their approach is. So for them, by launching this conference very generously, it was a way for them to make sure that people understood how different this creative agency was in approaching a business problem. And the beauty of C2 Montreal, it's been the 11th year actually happening this year in May. It became a nonprofit organization. It's owned by the city of Montreal. Because at the end of the day, one of the DNA of the city of Montreal is the creativity. So the city of Montreal, they realized that this conference serves the purpose of the city, will attract talent, will attract investment, will attract students. So it's good for the city, but it was also at the beginning very good for the agency. So basically, that was another example that we created that platform that has become now no longer part of Sidley. Sidley is the creative agency that launched this platform. I was part of Sidley back then. And that's it. And it's another big success story.
And if people want to check it out, you can see it on the screen here. It's C and then the number 2 Montreal.com. So if you're interested in it, you can check it out and see when the next dates are. Do you remember, Yanik, any of your favorite speakers over the years? Here I'm looking at the current ones, but I'm sure they're always changing. Who are some of the favorite speakers?
Like, we've been spoiled because we had the opportunity to have Richard Ford Coppola, Philip Stark, we had Richard Branson, we had Andre Agassi, we had Billie Jean King, we had so many. Snoop Dogg came one year. Listen, we were blessed to have such a great list of speakers. It's all individuals that really believe in creativity as a tool to propel the economy or the society forward. And then obviously they came to Montreal, they deliver speaking, and it's a conference that is attended by over 5,000-6,000 people from all around the world. And it's a great conference. And today, obviously it runs by itself. So, but at the beginning, it was the creative agency Sidley who thought about that. And they built that conference because Sidley, they wanted to show to the world that they see advertising in a very different lens. And C2 was an example to show that kind of a similar mission that the agency has.
And you mentioned before we hit record of some of you have some favorite books. I'd love to hear some of your favorite resources. It could be colleagues or books. And I know one you mentioned was Black Swan. Maybe talk about what takeaway from that book and maybe some other ones that you have really enjoyed throughout the years.
One of the things, part of my values, and I recommend everybody listening to this, it's not because you're successful, it's not because you're good, you've been good in the past, that you can rest on your laurels and believe that the future is going to be as good as in the past. So you got to reinvent yourself every day in order to be relevant for the industry, for the market, especially in a context where the society is evolving very rapidly. So for me, I have homework to do on a monthly basis. I push myself to read at least 2 books per month. And this is a discipline that I've developed many years ago. In the pandemic, I was, very blessed because I had so much more time to read books. But yes, to answer your question, I have a lot of examples. But the Black Swan was by Nicolas Taleb was a very good book because we tend to, want to predict what will happen in the future and do these kind of forecasts. And basically it makes the demonstration that, randomness drives the world. Extremes drives the world. And it has an impact on everything. So you can predict as much as you can, but it can be useless. At the end of the day, you got to make sure to kind of identify what are the possible black swans in order that when the black swans appear, it's not a black swan, it's a gray swan. So obviously no one predicted that we had, this kind of pandemic. No one predicted that. And then, obviously we cannot predict everything. So Nicolas Taleb, The Black Swan, for me is an absolutely must book that is absolutely good. But I'm not only reading about business books. I like to read about successful people that have mastered things that that is very, very hard to understand or to experience. One of the books that I really liked, it's the books that were the Great Mental Models. This book is a really, really solid book that is done by the Farnham Street, and Shane Parrish is the founder of Farnham Street. They made 3 volumes of the mental models, and basically it gives you shortcuts at the end of the day, because he makes the demonstration that if you use these mental models, you're going to save a lot of times. So Shane Parrish, he also recently published a book called Clear Thinking, is a must-read book. There's another author that I really like is Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan is the owner and business founder of Strategic Coach. He was my business coach for many years. I have an immense respect to Dan Sullivan, but he wrote several books. He's like a machine, that guy. All right. And one of my
favorite... I've listened to all of them at this point, but yeah, I love his books too.
Yeah, like Ooh, Not Now is a great book, but the one that I really liked the most was The Gap versus the Gain. And you know what? I was in the gap all last year, okay? And I didn't realize that until the end of the year. I was in the gap. I was not happy. I was always chasing for revenues, always being disappointed. And I realized, why are you in the gap, Yanik? Put yourself in the position being in the game. And that's what I did. It's a shift of mindset. And Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach is a genius. I really admire that guy. And also, I'm a tennis player. Tennis is my life. I play tennis every day. For me, it's not about winning or losing about tennis. It's more about the journey to become the best. It has an impact on my relationships. I think I'm a better dad because I play tennis. I think I'm a better employer because I play tennis. I think I'm smarter because I play tennis. I think I have more mental strength and capacity to face problems because of tennis. And one of my role model is Rafa Nadal. Nadal is an amazing guy, and he wrote an autobiography a long time ago that is called Rafa. It's a beautiful book about how he developed his mental strength and his values and stuff like that. So for those of the people who really like tennis and especially great athletes, the book about Rafa is absolutely a must read. It's beautiful. The ghostwriter did a wonderful job sharing the story. It's really well written, and it captures your imagination. It makes you realize the importance of being humble and work hard and have a great work ethic. And I admire Rafa Nadal a lot. And these are the kind of examples of books. But the list goes on and on and on. As I said, I read books all the time. I love it. If your audience has some books to share, recommend, I'm open. I buy books almost every week. I love it.
No, thanks for sharing those. And I will have to check out Clear Thinking. I love the concept of mental models. One of my friends, Michael Simmons, talks about this. He's got a newsletter on it, and I'm sure he shared some of the stuff that Shane talks about, but I will have to check that Clear Thinking and the Great Mental Models. When you were talking about Black Swan, it reminds me of one of my favorites. I had Chris Voss on the podcast before, and he wrote Never Split the Difference, and his company is called the Black Swan Group. So I don't know if you...
I agree. There's a little bit confusion there.
Have you checked out the Never Split the Difference?
Of course, I know him. I'm a big fan of Chris Voss as well. He's the former hostage negotiator for the FBI, these crazy things, the way he approached things. Of course, he's a great guy. I love him.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. So yeah, thanks for sharing all those. You brought something up earlier about kind of going back to work in this post-COVID world, and we were chatting about values of people the values of people working is evolving. And can you speak to that?
I'm questioning myself if the new generations strive for excellence. All right. And that's a big concern that I have. Striving for excellence has always been part of my work ethic. And I look at sometimes at the new generations I question myself if they are ready to do the extra mile. One of the biggest concern I have as a team leader is how can I deal with this new generation to make them so motivated to go to work, do the extra mile without having me to push them or to threaten them. I'm never going to threaten, but the point is, I want it comes from them. And I think this is something that I'm working every day because the new generation is different from my generation. And I don't want to compare, back in the old days, it was good. Old days is over. Now it's today. All right. How do you deal with these new generation of people, especially going post-pandemic? And how can you understand their mindset and trying to push them to work as hard as I did when I was young? So that's a kind of a gray zone for me sometimes that I question myself every day.
So have you found anything? What have you explored or found up to this point?
Well, Dan Sullivan really helped me with that. He developed the concept of unique ability. And I found that it's very interesting what he has developed. For him, every work you do, it's either A work, B work, or C work. Okay? So I ask my people, what is your A work? What is your B work? And what is your C work? The A work is the work you hate to do. Okay? You hate doing this, but you're a professional. You got to pay your dues. I'm going to do it. The B work is the work where been there, done that. It's easy. I'll do it. But I have no emotion doing it. And then the C work is where time flies. I love it. I could work 7 days a week. So I asked my team to identify the A, B, and C work. And my challenge is to make sure that 80% of the work they do, it's the C work. All right? A little bit of B, but never A work. Because the beauty of life, my A work can be your C work, Jeremy. And your C work can be my A work. That's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of humans. So I try to identify the work that is done and put everyone on the team on the C work. And I think with the new generation, this is working. This is a model that I'm pushing, and this is not my model. I got to attribute that to Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He's the genius behind that model, and I really follow that.
No, I love that because it's kind of what someone loves doing. It's almost time flies. It's their zone of genius, and if they're staying in that space, they're going to be it's self-motivating, right? Because they just love doing it, right? Something that when I think of what would I do for free just because I love doing it and getting paid for it, obviously. So, one of the things I was looking at on your site, one of my favorite parts of your website, and people go check it out at YPR Canada, is the talent.com. Talk a little bit about, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to play this video on silent just so it doesn't interrupt your speech, but I love the video on that page. Mm-hmm. What did you do with talent.com?
So probably a lot of people, your listeners, never heard of talent.com, but they all know Indeed. Obviously, Indeed is like #1 in the US in order to help employers and employees to connect. Indeed is #1. LinkedIn is very obviously extremely top of mind. But talent.com is getting, trying to build their presence in the US and all around the world, but they don't have the budget of Indeed and they don't have the budget of LinkedIn. So, but they want to be top of mind with employers and employees. And they really believed in the power of media. And they came to us and they said, we want to be in the press. We want to be like in every conversations that is related to recruitment. We said, sure, we'll do that. So what we did basically is identifying questions that could spark a conversation. And when we did, like, we identified two things. The first one was pay transparency. It's a concept that has been started in the US. Now it's mandatory. It's law in New York City, or New York State, I mean. And but more and more employees want to know, what's the pay? Companies should put the salary on the website to show what is the pay. So we said, is it good? Is it bad? Let's run a survey and let's see what people believe in that. And we found it was not black and white. A lot of people say it's a good thing. A lot of people say it may not be a good thing. And then we shared the results. And then Talent.com was in the middle of the conversation around pay transparency. Every time that an employer wanted to talk about pay transparency, well, all media came to the survey that was conducted by Talent.com and wanted to have an expert from Talent.com to share about his perspective. What are the best practice related to that? And what's the opinion? And the other topic that we found that there was kind of a conversation to have in the market was the 4-day work week. The 4-day work week is something that was very present, and it's still very present. Is it still good or bad? We put that conversation, we ran a survey in different states and provinces in Canada and the US, and then we realized that, it was not black and white. So we put the survey out there, and the media were interested, because it was not about talent, how talent is great, about how talent is the best platform. It was more about talent understanding the burning questions or the hot topics that most employers and employees are having at the moment, and helping them to learn more and get a fresh opinion about what we should do based on these topics. So these are examples that I recommend for companies that may not have a lot of brand awareness or nothing to announce, to identify odd conversation out there, putting fresh data, and then being in the middle and being generous in sharing their point of view. If you do that, again, you're going to pay the dividend. And Talent.com got millions of impressions. The market share grow. Obviously, Indeed is still by far number one. But in any case, they were in the media. And the good thing about being in the media is the media have a high domain authority on Google. What that means, it means that if you do queries on Google, automatically on important questions for you, Talent.com is going to be the organic results because of the press they got related to specific keywords. So we got a big dent. That's why media relations is so important. Again, because most of media have high domain authority, and having high domain authority makes you top, in the top organic results by Google, and you always want to be in the top. For example, your podcast, Jeremy, if you want to be like, top podcast, obviously that's very generic, but you want to make sure that Google ranks you top of mind. So this is a way to get attention and to get like this kind of word of mouth. Again, what we're doing.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I love the creative around it with the video and the infographics, and actually several people on the podcast. I had Travis Makishin of Glide Design, and he talked about implementing the 4-day work week, and also Andrew Barnes talked about it as well. So I love that the concept and how they laid out what they did. So I'll have to check out talent.com and see what the research that you all did there. I have one last question and before I do, I just want to point people to check out your website and your company. The company's YPR, the website, you can check out yprcanada.com to learn more. And you've seen it as we've been doing the interview and poking around there. My last question is just some colleagues or mentors in the industry that you've learned from, and some great advice and lessons they gave you.
Well, Jean-François Bouchard, who's the founder of Sidley, is one of my favorite mentor that I ever had. I'll always be grateful to have the chance to meet with him, earn his trust, and work with him for several years. Jean-François Bouchard is, he built like a global creative agencies. Sidley is renowned now all around the world. And JF, the magic of JF was the capacity to surround yourself with people that are exceptional. So I think JF spent his life trying to identify top talents and making sure to surround himself with people that are truly exceptional. And I think it's something that I always remember. And also in the world of an agency, at the end of the day, there's three things that matters that I learned. You got to have the relationships, the right relationships. You got to be singular in the market, and you have to deliver. Okay, because you can be the smart, the nicest, the coolest guy in the world. Everybody likes you, but if you're not singular, then the problem is that people will probably challenge you with the price. You don't want to have to become a commodity. And the third thing is, even if you're super nice guy, even if you're a very singular, but if you don't deliver results at the end of the day, people won't call you back. So you got to be obsessed with the results. And that's what I learned from JF and all the mentors that I had. So that's why today I'm very obsessed with these three elements when I built YPR.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. This has been amazing. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, your lessons, your journey. Everyone check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out yprcanada.com, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.